国 H-1B 的天塌了，回美的航班一夜爆满。
The H-1B visa situation in the US has just taken a major turn, with flights to the US packed overnight, and this is big news. The Silicon Valley wives of global travelers have rushed back to the US overnight. On the evening of September 19th, President Donald Trump unexpectedly announced a new hike in the H-1B visa fees for high-tech workers, raising them to $100,000 per year. Anyone holding this visa who plans to re-enter the U.S. after the new policy takes effect after September 21st will need to pay the additional fees. The policy took effect at midnight Eastern Time on September 21st, causing panic among many overseas workers, especially those from China and India. On the 21st, flight prices from Shanghai to the US nearly doubled. A race against time began to unfold around the world. One experience shared by a Xiaohongshu blogger could easily make headlines. She had planned to fly from New York to France for a trip, but just as the plane was about to take off, she saw the news about the policy change. She immediately communicated with the flight attendants, and the captain turned the plane around just for her. Netizens joked, saying she was the master who forced the plane to turn back. The blogger shared her feelings, saying she was very disappointed and sad. She recalled how during the COVID outbreak she had to return to China for the holidays, but the flight was cancelled. After staying home for just 2 days, she was sent back to the US. Now, her planned trip to France was ruined, and she had to cancel on her friends, some of whom had flown in from China. She felt sorry and said that it made her realize how insignificant people are in this world. Netizens commented that she was lucky, as many others were in even more desperate situations. The Chinese American forum, 1.3 acres, was flooded with stories of people stuck on planes. The site was full of complaints, with some even landing in China, then immediately buying tickets to fly back to the US to make it before the new rules were enforced. Late at night on September 19th, one user posted on the forum, "It's 11:29 p.m. Eastern Time, and I'm on a flight back to China." This user was working in the US and was scheduled to renew their H-1B visa on September 22nd in Wuhan, but just received the news about the new policy while on the plane. Everything was suddenly in limbo. Their visa expired on July 30th, and the scheduled interview hadn't been cancelled yet, but the new policy created confusion. The lawyer told them that they would have to wait until September 23rd to challenge the policy in court. In their post, they expressed frustration, writing, "I'm speechless. Now I'm just numb." They even joked, "Now I'm just waiting to land in Shanghai and find something to eat because I'm starving." This situation wasn't unique. Another user replied, saying, "I'm in Incheon right now. My visa expired, and now I can't go back to the US." They had planned to attend their visa interview on September 22nd, but the sudden announcement of the policy left them unprepared. They said, "If only I had left 1 day earlier." More netizens continued to share their experiences. Some had just arrived in Japan for a short trip when they got the news, while others were on their way to a wedding when they received the update, immediately having to rebook their flights back to the US. Some people said, "I immediately booked a flight from China for Saturday, September 20th. It should get me into the US before the midnight Eastern Time on the 21st. Another person wrote, "Anyway, I can't leave the country for now, so I'll just wait for the dust to settle. Entering the US now requires $100,000. One netizen lamented, "This is the real-life version of Squid Game." Many affected people described the implementation of the new policy as a surprise raid, as if they were thrown into a large survival game with no way out. One self-proclaimed victim shared their experience. "I woke up on February 2nd, 2020 to a flood of messages, quickly booked a $4,000 economy class ticket, and went back to China. Now I never expected this to happen again on September 20th, 2025. They explained that after flying for over 20 hours and arriving in China with no rest at all, they had to immediately book a return flight to the US after seeing the new visa policy. They had only seen the news that morning because they were getting up early for a friend's wedding. Otherwise, they wouldn't have known about it at all." Another person, calling themselves an H-1B refugee, wrote, "No one's return trip will be shorter than mine. The Wi-Fi on the plane wasn't working, and when I landed, my phone exploded with messages. I thought the new visa policy was a scam at first, but then I had no choice but to board a flight back to the US." At the same time, Chinese media outlet First Financial reported that several American universities and tech companies sent urgent emails to employees on the evening of September 19th, urging international workers not to leave the US. Those currently outside the U.S. on an H-1B visa were strongly advised to return before midnight on September 21st. The report pointed out that this news caused a stir among the Chinese working and student communities in the U.S. One person who was visiting family back in China said, "I urgently rebooked my flight today, hoping to catch the last direct flight to the US before the $100,000 fee takes effect." Because of the sudden nature of this event, some Chinese netizens initially booked a flight to Hawaii, planning to enter the US there and figure out the rest of their travel afterward. For flights from Shanghai to the US, Hawaii was the closest US state. The report observed that in just a few hours, the price of flights from Shanghai to Hawaii on September 20th had surged by thousands of yuan. According to Chinese booking platform Ctrip, it was almost impossible to find a flight that would arrive in Hawaii before the deadline on the 21st. Flights from Shanghai to San Francisco before the 21st were priced at around 10,000 yuan, about $1,400 US, while tickets to Los Angeles were priced at 6,000 to 7,000 yuan, more than $840. Direct flights in economy class were going for as high as 17,000 yuan, or about $2,400 US. A netizen on X reminded others, if you're in China, you can fly to Hawaii or Guam and make it before the September 21st deadline. If you're flying to the US mainland and the flight is delayed, you'll run into trouble. Another user mentioned, "I've been waiting for an upgrade to business class, so I check the seat map every day. A few days ago, there were quite a few people in business class, but economy class was practically empty." After hearing about the new visa regulations, she quickly checked the seat map again, and she was shocked. On a flight arriving at 8:10 p.m. Pacific time, the economy class, which had been empty, suddenly filled up. That's 11:10 p.m. Eastern time, just 50 minutes before the deadline. She said she also boarded the plane and noticed many people seemed downcast. After the doors closed, several passengers asked the flight attendants if they could disembark early. Some passengers mentioned they were preparing to get off quickly once the plane landed. Suddenly, H-1B cattle and visa refugees became trending terms among overseas Chinese. Many Chinese netizens believe that the Trump administration's move is essentially a way to force people out. One netizen worried out loud, "I feel like this is exactly what Trump wants. After all, even US college graduates are struggling to find jobs now." India is also significantly impacted by the new regulations. According to a statement from the Indian ministry on September 20th, India will continue discussions with US authorities, emphasizing the close ties between India and the US in tech and innovation. They urge the US to address the humanitarian consequences affecting families. A netizen shared on X that on a flight from San Francisco to New Delhi, several passengers who appeared to be of Indian descent requested to disembark and cancel their departure plans upon hearing the news. However, Shashank Matu, a reporter for Hindustan Times based in the US, revealed on X on September 20th that US officials, citing a White House executive order, confirmed that Indian H-1B visa holders do not need to rush back to the US before the 21st. The new $100,000 fee only applies to new H-1B applications and not to renewals. As the policy was newly announced, some reports had inaccuracies. The official White House X account posted on September 20th to clarify key details regarding the new H-1B fee in the executive order. 1. The announcement does not apply to anyone holding a valid H-1B visa. 2. The announcement only applies to future applicants currently outside the U.S., preparing for the February 2026 lottery. It does not apply to those participating in the 2025 lottery. 3. The announcement does not affect any current H-1B visa holders traveling to or from the U.S. The White House also stated that some corporate lawyers and other parties had spread a lot of fake news about the H-1B announcement. They clarified that this fee does not affect existing visa holders or those renewing their visas. The new fee will first apply to new applicants in the upcoming H-1B lottery cycle and will not affect current visa holders or renewals. Shortly after President Trump signed the executive order, U.S. companies, universities, and immigration lawyers warned H-1B holders to return to the U.S. before midnight on September 21st, as the new policy would take effect early on the 22nd. The presidential announcement, which was signed on September 19th, did not clearly distinguish between current visa holders and future applicants, and the government has yet to issue further guidance to clarify the various speculations and interpretations circulating. According to the announcement, the president instructed the Secretary of Homeland Security to restrict the entry of H-1B visa holders currently outside the U.S. and applicants who have not yet paid the new fee. By comparing the latest White House announcement with President Trump's previous directive to the Secretary of Homeland Security, we can see that there are significant differences in nature between the two. The initial interpretation of the president's announcement suggested that the following situations would require the payment of the $100,000 fee. 1. Individuals selected for an H-1B work visa from outside the U.S. Since they are not international students in the U.S., after being selected, they receive their work visas at a U.S. consulate abroad. If they have not yet entered the U.S., they must do so before midnight on September 21st, or their employer will need to pay $100,000 to the U.S. government. 2. H-1B visa holders who leave the U.S. for travel or family visits must return before midnight on September 21st. 3. H-1B visa holders who are renewing their visas abroad must return by midnight on September 21st, or their employer will need to pay $100,000. In its statement, the White House explained the rationale behind this policy. First, the H-1B program had been misused by IT outsourcing companies. The original purpose of the H-1B visa program was to temporarily bring in highly skilled talent when U.S. companies were unable to find qualified local employees, especially in STEM fields. However, reports show that this system has been widely abused and has become a tool for companies to suppress wages and replace American workers. IT outsourcing companies have been the primary beneficiaries. The proportion of H-1B workers in the tech sector has increased from 32% in 2003 to over 65% in recent years. Research shows that employing entry-level H-1B workers allows employers to save up to 36% in costs. Secondly, some companies have been laying off American workers while hiring large numbers of H-1B workers. For example, one software company laid off 15,000 U.S. workers while approving the hiring of over 5,000 H-1B workers. Another company in Oregon laid off 2,400 local employees, but was allowed to hire nearly 1,700 foreign workers at the same time. Some companies have even forced laid-off American workers to train their H-1B replacements and sign non-disclosure agreements. Research shows that if the U.S. did not overly rely on H-1B workers, the salaries of computer scientists in the U.S. could have been 2.6% to 5.1% higher, and employment rates could have risen from 6.1% to 10.8%. Additionally, there are national security risks involved. Law enforcement investigations have found that some outsourcing companies relying on H-1B workers are suspected of visa fraud, money laundering, illegal labor activities, and may even be violating the Racketeer-Influenced and Corruption Organizations Act. Analysts warn that a large number of low-paid foreign workers in key technical positions not only undermine the original intent of the program, but could also pose a threat to national security. Analyst Mr. Z commented that the Trump administration's policy could be considered a triple win. First, in terms of both the economy and security, this policy is beneficial for U.S. companies and society, particularly in securing jobs in high-tech sectors. To put it simply, the U.S. government has found that many IT companies eager to hire H-1B workers are not loyal to the U.S. The saying, "capital has no nationality," has long been popular, and this concept has now spread to U.S. tech companies, even in manufacturing. The root cause behind this is the infiltration by the Chinese Communist Party. Some American tech companies have been severely infiltrated by the CCP. The real goal of these companies is not research and development, but rather to gain U.S. IT outsourcing business through low prices and steal or transfer key technologies from large U.S. companies during the process. The widespread use of cheap H-1B workers is crucial for cost control and evading legal sanctions in this low-price competition. If local American workers were used, the risks would be significantly higher. This policy aims to crack down on potentially harmful companies within the U.S., boost the salaries of local high-tech workers, and cut off the ability of hostile forces to use American resources and steal the latest technologies. Secondly, this policy sends a clear political message, targeting two areas, one of which is the Chinese government. Mr. Z said that any Chinese person working at a U.S. company who returns to China will, if the CCP deems them useful, be forced to become a spy using all available means. This is no secret. Soon, H-1B workers from China who currently travel between the U.S. and China are very likely to become CCP spies. Therefore, based on Trump's original directive to the Secretary of Homeland Security, the plan was to restrict employees holding H-1B visas who leave the U.S. While this restriction may have been temporarily relaxed due to coordination between departments and companies, it's highly likely to be implemented in the long run. This is also a warning to those employees with suspicious intentions. For Chinese employees who originally plan to stay long-term in the U.S., work comfortably, and eventually obtain a green card or even citizenship, this policy will have no effect. The real aim of this policy is to extend the tightening of Chinese student visa regulations, which were primarily driven by national security concerns, and to send a clear warning to the Chinese Communist Party. Another target is India. According to U.S. government statistics, about 2/3 of foreign workers employed under the H-1B visa are in the computer-related field. Last year, Indian nationals accounted for 71% of approved H-1B visas, while China ranked second with 11.7%. Trump has expressed dissatisfaction with the Indian government's stance in the Russia-Ukraine war. He believes that India's close cooperation with Russia in energy and military matters has strengthened Putin's resolve to continue the war. Although Trump views the CCP as the main factor undermining efforts to mediate the Russia-Ukraine conflict, India's support for Russia has made the situation more complicated. Trump's primary goal is to bring peace to Europe and the Middle East, deploy major military forces to the Asia-Pacific region, and focus all efforts on countering the CCP. India's choice to align itself with the new axis of evil has surprised the international community. Trump's new H-1B policy sends a strong signal to India. If India ultimately sides with the U.S.'s adversaries, Indian IT workers in the U.S. may be viewed as untrustworthy. This policy came as a surprise, intended to create a powerful deterrent effect. For individuals, Chinese employees are most affected, while for India, the policy primarily serves as a political signal.